Hey there, good morning, afternoon, evening, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today we're taking a look at our newest main event for version 2.7, the Hidden Dreams in the Depths event. A chasm-focused event including plenty of characters, and the event has just finished revealing all of its parts. The story ended one day ago, but the final stage of the gameplay event, the gameplay part of the event, wasn't out yet. It is now out, and we are gonna take a look at it. So this event wasn't the festival kind of event, so there weren't like a tons of mini games. It was a one type of like mini game or anything gameplay related stuff. That's fine. There's nothing really wrong with that. So let's take a look at what happened in this event. So starting off with the story, a general review of it, I would say, was pretty much fine. There was an interesting story in it, but it was mostly, the background stuff that was, explained to us and given to us. Because what really happened, in present time wasn't extremely interesting. But yeah, the overall story was pretty much fine. But, I have a few, nitpicks about it. One is something that they didn't do in the Irodori Festival event, and I thought that this would, continue, is that they went and lore dumped everything at the last part of the event, which is something they have done plenty of times, but it's a thing that the Irodori Festival didn't do, where the story, every time there was a story quest, went nicely. There were small parts of the story, and then at the last part, everything was connected together. This time, in the first two story quests, nothing happened. You were just the first one was getting trapped into the cave, the second one was still being trapped into the cave, and then the last part, just everything happened. They found what they were looking for, what Yanfei was looking for, and then they escaped, and then lore dump galore with a bunch of cutscenes and explanations, which it's just not good pacing. That's the problem. It doesn't hurt the story crazily. It's just that the pacing, it doesn't make it very, very enjoyable compared to other, again, the Irodori Festival is the best comparison, where things, again, were much better paced, again, with the small parts and then the ending. So, yeah, I didn't exactly like that everything was just lore dumped on you at the last part. Then, and that's really it. Next comes a few more nitpicks. First of all, Yellen basically didn't need to be there. Yellen didn't add anything to the story, not in character, not in her backstory, not in anything. And you very well know that she was there just because she was just because she is the 5-star in the banners right now, the new 5-star. But that doesn't exactly hurt the story. Again, it's fine. Again, I'm just saying that she just didn't add much. And something other Yellen related, and I think something that everybody has noticed is, and also goes a bit into the event itself, is that they just didn't give just a tiny bit more effort in the presentation of the story. Because you all know the scene where Yellen jumps down from the cliff at the first story quest, and they decided to reuse the bow plunging attack animation instead of just animating Yellen doing a short hop and then landing down. And, because of that animation, of course, and that scene looked so janky and so bad. And I was like, really now? You couldn't, just animate her jumping a bit and then just landing? You had to use this animation that just looked so bad? And yeah, that's the thing about not putting just a tiny bit more effort, because there's cleverly reusing animations where needed in order to save time and space, which is what you would do in the PlayStation 1 era, to save space. But there's, again, cleverly reusing animations where they can fit, and then just being lazy, because that's what this was. Another example is something like when they are tinkering with the compass, when Yanfei says that she wants to tinker with it, like touch it, activate it, because she's an Adepti and a human. They don't like show Yanfei touching, of course, the compass. They use that shitty handout animation that you would see basically everywhere, reused again and again and again. And yeah, like it's just this tiny bit more effort that I bet you that the developers would most likely want to put into the game, but you know exactly that the management team is like, you must, save every penny, so no new animations. We gotta make those billions. Which is just, again, sad because you have such a good project and then you just withhold the funds from it, but we're not getting into that. And that's really much about it, about the story. And before you go and say that, well, didn't 2.7's delay make it so that, they had to cut corners? The answer is no, because the delay wasn't connected to the event. First of all, the event was done way before the lockdown happened and 2.7 had to be delayed. And the major reason why 2.7 was delayed is because the Chinese voice actors couldn't go to the recording studios to record their lines, because voice lines are kind of the last thing that you would do in game development sometimes, because they are kind of last thing. Develop the game first, add this stuff second. And yeah, that's kind of why you can't give the delay of 2.7 the reason why this thing looked like jack. Why they had to reuse the animation. But that's it for the story parts. Again, they are nitpicks. There isn't something groundbreaking bad about this story. It's just a bit, about the pacing, where they could have spread out the backstories and could have done something more while the characters were in the cave, to again make the story progress a bit nicer, and then just freaking stop gatekeeping the game from looking good and give characters more animations instead of reusing the same ones again and again and again and again, because it just stops looking good or looking smart even. So let's get into the gameplay part, the minigames part of the event. Well, there is a bit of a complaint here as well, is that they didn't exactly connect the minigame, like the gameplay part of the event, to the story. You finish the first part of the event, the first story quest, and then you get a pop-up that just says, a mysterious sign is somewhere within the cave. Find it and interact with it in order to start the gameplay part of the event. I was like, really now? You just dump this stupid sign somewhere, and then you're like, yeah, this is how you're gonna play the gameplay part, the mini game. Something like, you couldn't just tie it a bit better to the story, especially since the environment of the gameplay part of the event was within those domains that we explored while in the story. So they could have easily made it so while you were doing the story, you were also doing this part of the event. Or, to be honest, they could have just made it so that people could just access the gameplay part of the event through the event menu, instead of having this dumb sign, because it really doesn't make sense. You can have an argument that, they could have just, because the characters escape, how exactly would you have people able to go back to that cave part, in order to access the domains? Sure, they could have written the story a bit differently, or they could have, again, made the pacing of the story and the gameplay part of the event tied together, and then once you were out of the cave, well, things were kind of gone. Since this is also kind of an Archon quest, apparently it was an interlude, so, that was kind of, how exactly are people gonna experience that? But yeah, come on now, this sign is just seriously dumb. Instead of accessing the gameplay part, the mini games through just the event menu, which would have been perfectly fine, just teleports you into the domain from where you are, the sign just felt really dumb. That's the thing. Sometimes nothing is better than something in this case, because it really looked kind of stupid. That's the only big problem and complaint about the gameplay part of the event, of the minigames. I'll just call it the minigame thing, because the combat thing was actually really cool. The environments, the domains that we were playing, the combat minigame were actually kind of nice, although the second one definitely could have, caused some dizziness. I 100% agree. If you got dizzy during that, like, weird, like, not teleporting, but, the weird rotating platforms thing, like, yeah, indeed, that was kind of dizzy. The environments were nice, they were pretty, but the best part was that the combat stuff was actually nice and enjoyable. First of all, every different part of the combat minigame had a different rule on how you should switch out your characters, because you were forced to let some characters go away and then keep some with you. The first time you picked one character to go forwards, then the second time 2 random characters were completely gone. The third one, all of your characters were on a round cooldown, as it was called, and then the last one, you chose a character to go forwards, and then the other characters will also go on an extended cooldown. It was really nice, and again, it made nice variety as you were going through the different parts of the event, so again, very nice. There were like the different buffs that were really like crazy. I liked the buff that you gained an attack bonus if you had different kinds of weapon characters. Like if you had 3 or more different weapons in your party, you would get an attack bonus. There were some other stuff about normal attack damage bonuses and the likes, but that was really nice. They were nice effects that were nicely different. But the big one, believe it or not, one of the big reasons why this combat event was actually nice and enjoyable is because the fights did not have a timer. This, believe it or not, is a major part. It makes the event much more enjoyable because a timer is such a bad way of introducing difficulty. A timer is what I call artificial difficulty, where you're not actually making the game harder, you're not actually making the players think harder and make new strategies. You're just forcing the player to just dump all they can into, damage per second, which is the big one, and really just stress themselves for no reason. It's not a nice thing to have a timer, and seriously, it was so nice that there were no timers in any part of this event. Like, seriously nice. At one point, I used my Ayato team, my Ayato hypercarry team, which is Bennett, Venti, Ayato, and Child, because I like Child. And I went up against Hydro Mimics, the Oceanid creatures, which I didn't see were coming up, because you were able to see the enemies every time you switched characters, and I did not notice that. But I was able, without the timer, I was able to beat the Oceanids with Venti, Bennett, and physical attacks from Ayato and Child. With a timer, I would have been like, well, reset the event completely, reset the stage, because, it wouldn't have felt nice. So, again, the fact that there was no timer, super happy. And overall, there were no annoying enemies. There were a few mini-bosses like Mago Genki. I went up against the Geo Vishap. I think my sister went up against one of the cubes, I think. Against the PMA, actually, I believe. So I think you would actually find different enemies, at least the bosses, compared to other players. So that was kind of interesting. But the enemies didn't have some sort of stupid buffs or stupid effects. They just had a bit of increased HP, and that was perfectly fine. So, yeah. And that's it. Again, they didn't have any sort of other different minigames, and the story was done in a few days. Actually surprised that there weren't any more cuts, more breaks between the story. Usually you wait like 1 or 2 days before the next story part. But this event went a bit quickly for being the main event of the version, but it was perfectly fine. A few nitpicks here and there, but hopefully we see them fixed in later stages, in later events. And that's it. That's it from me. I hope to see you guys in another video. See ya.